One of the challenging things about figuring out how you want to go offshore that I deal with is people will come to me or people will leave comments and they'll say, Andrew, what would you suggest I do in my situation? And we've made over 1,000 videos. We've made close to 2,000 blog posts. I wrote a book, and I've talked a lot about ideas. I've talked about countries that I think are moving in the right direction. I've talked about regions and concepts that are worth considering. And I can help you with strategy. But I think that the missing element that almost nobody talks about is there's a deep intimacy around creating an entirely new life overseas. Nobody really talks about this, but that is the reason why it's so difficult to say, let me just copy Andrew Henderson's offshore plan. You see, we all have different lifestyles. We all want different lifestyles. We're all at different levels of our business. We all have different businesses that are set up differently. Some of us are investors. Some of us have small businesses, big businesses. We want to do 4-hour work week. We want to build as big as possible. I mean, there's so many different permutations that are out there that simply saying, well, I heard Andrew say banking in Georgia. That may not be the best place for you to bank. Now, I don't know if banking in Georgia and then doing something else, if that changes things. I'm probably pretty agnostic to anyone banking in Georgia, but that may not be the best place for you. And I think that people are looking to say, how do I just kind of borrow Andrew's strategy? But the reality is, most people don't want to renounce their U.S. citizenship. I have my own personal issues that I don't talk about here because it's not interesting. But not everybody shares my views. Not everyone shares my lack of a desire to live in the United States in the future. And so I made a decision that's based on a lot of behind-the-scenes things. And to simply say, oh, well, Andrew renounced, I should. I think sometimes I talk to people and they feel like I'm pushing them to do things that I've done. And the reality is, when you talk to me, there are no loaded questions. There is never me pushing you in one direction because I realize that the things that I've done reflect the life that I lead and the life that I want to lead. And so just to say, whether it's me or your friend who put a plan together or your brother-in-law, you can't take any of our plans and adapt that to you because, and this is something that I think people who bought my book, for example, a few people had a challenge with, is they were expecting to say, if your name is Bob and you live here and your business is this, then you should do this, 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 and this. And there's never a perfect example. There's millions of possible examples. And not only that, but the examples change every day as programs come, go, raise the price, lower the price. It's impossible to do that. Just as an example, if I were single, I would probably spend less time living in Montenegro in a normal year. It is a great place to take your girlfriend, to take your wife. Not as great of a place if you are on the prowl. I didn't move to Puerto Rico, not because I think that Puerto Rico is a terrible idea. Now, I have concerns for Americans who want tax savings in Puerto Rico. I do think there are some potential future challenges with that program. I do not think it's the panacea that some people make it out to be. But if you want to move to Puerto Rico, I had a guy recently, he said, I love Puerto Rico. He says, I love Puerto Rican women and I'd like to go down there and date and have a great time. It's exactly the environment I want and perfect, right? It's something that I didn't do, but it's something that he wanted to do. And so, in my perspective, I probably wouldn't be dating Puerto Ricans or Americans. I would be dating people and I'd be spending half my year on Puerto Rico dating someone who didn't have a U.S. visa or did, but couldn't stay with me all the time, and that'd be a challenge. And so everyone's situation is different. I don't move to Monaco because I don't want to. Somebody said, if you're so rich, why don't you move to Monaco? I don't know that I've ever said that I'm so rich, but I just don't want to. And Mrs. H, I think, is a little frugal, and she would cringe over the idea of 40 euro hamburgers. And so I just don't think it would work out. But when someone comes to me and they can afford to move to Monaco and that's the lifestyle they want, then I've supported them in saying, let's make that part of the plan. One thing that I think is different about me that has come from years and years and years of doing this and perhaps building up a tolerance is I like the off the beaten path places. I like the Serbias. I increasingly find Armenia interesting. I like just places that people aren't talking about that much. I like to almost be a contrarian and go against the name brands. And whenever something becomes too much of a name brand, I start to kind of lose interest in it because I like that more pioneer atmosphere. I've had some of my best travel experiences in places like Laos or Mongolia. I mean, just it's fascinating to me. Even Moldova, a place that you probably don't want to live there, but it's fascinated me. And yet, I doubt a lot of people watching this want to go and live in Moldova. And so what's fascinated me is when I go out and see some of these guys who they start their little blog, and that's nice, but it's like, oh, they go to Georgia, they go to Malaysia, they go to Montenegro, they promote like every single place I've ever talked about. And it's like, no, don't copy what I've done. Go out and make your own plan based on where you're at, because my plan is constantly adapting. I'm constantly adding to and tweaking and changing and keeping most of the stuff intact, but just adding new stuff on to make it more scalable. And you don't want to just say, well, I'm just going to go to Georgia because he said so. Yes, go to Georgia and check it out. Yes, potentially open a bank account. But I never said start your business in Georgia. It is certainly an opportunity. And if you are watching this and you are 17 years old and you don't want to go to university and you want to go start a business in somewhere with wide open opportunity, then Laos or Georgia or Cambodia, these are places where you're going to have, it's going to be a learning curve, but you can potentially do something very interesting. Maybe not so much Laos, but I lead perhaps a more extreme version of the nomad capitalist lifestyle, but I don't expect you to do that. I think that everyone should do what's best for them. And I've had couples where the wife says, I'm only interested in moving in Spain or Portugal. And so we work with Spain or Portugal and we take advantage of lesser tax incentives. For example, in Spain, there are some tax incentives. They're going to save some money, with the hope that I can give them some places to explore, that as they go, they will be more and more open to some of the places that I talk about. Maybe not quite as extreme as some of the places that I like, but perhaps they'll be open to places that are a bit more tax-friendly, that are a bit more off the beaten path. But if they never decide to go to those places, that's okay. And I think that merely the act of diversifying, getting out of your comfort zone, doing something different, going beyond your own country's borders is in and of itself commendable. And we shouldn't be focused on how do I adapt Andrew Henderson's plan to me, but rather asking yourself the kind of questions that if you're working with me, I ask you. Hundreds of questions in some cases about what you like and what you don't like and what you're willing to put up with. And what we've started talking about, we made a video recently where we talked about low-tax countries that have winter and that have snow, because so many of the low-tax countries are in places where it's hot most of the year. And I've had more and more people saying, I like to wear a sweater. I like to wear a trench coat. I like to ski. Where can I go and have that more than 2 weeks a year on vacation? And you realize that not everyone wants to live on a beach. I think what you can do is not only can you ease into things over time, but you can also follow the same approach that Tom Ford talks about with fashion. He says, I don't want to see somebody where they're dressed head to toe in Tom Ford. He says, take a little bit about what I've done. Take a pair of pants, take some jeans, take a jacket, take something, and then pair it with other things in your wardrobe that speak to your style. Don't just, dress head to toe in Tom Ford and say, oh, this is so stylish. That's not interesting. I mean, style is coming up with what works for you. Very rarely do you see someone who just, copies what everyone else is wearing, saying, oh, that person's a style pioneer. And I think that you want to follow a similar trajectory where you might check out some of the things that I'm talking about and realize on some of them, you don't agree with me. You don't agree that Serbia is a good place to live. You don't, find the online banking in Armenia as good as the banking in Singapore, and so you're not going to do it. And that's fine. You don't have the risk tolerance, perhaps, that I do for, when I've said that I'm comfortable keeping money in Armenia, even when they have a skirmish going on. That's okay. And I think being honest about that and creating your own plan that speaks to what you're comfortable with, where you want to live, what your social status is, all these things go into a plan. Don't be the guy who just follows me around everywhere and extols the virtues of every country I've ever talked about. Go out and try some new places. If you like Latin America, go to places that we haven't talked about and dig in deep and find out what you like and explore and adapt your plan over time. For me, I think that having a core financial plan, where your company is located, how your taxes are kept low, where your banking infrastructure is. Having a core plan that doesn't change, that you can keep for the next 5, 10, or 20 years, that's important. And then having some guidelines of don't move to France because that'll screw it all up. But knowing that even then you could have dozens of countries to choose from to spend your whole year in, spend part of your year in, that you can add onto that plan if you want an additional bank, or if you want to do crypto, or if you want to buy gold, whatever it is. Have a core plan and then adapt as you go. But don't feel like you should borrow someone else's plan, because everything about me, everything about my business, everything about my goals, my needs, my wants, my desires are different from yours. And a path to getting the wrong plan for you is borrowing someone else's plan to try and save time and save money. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.